Rachna, Anchita, Kavita, Stefano, Sapna, Vinati, Christine. Thank you for joining. Let me bring up the PowerPoint. And we'll read the verses first, and then we'll go through the PowerPoint. Am I audible now?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes.
So today we are discussing section 3 of the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, text 21 through 27. In the last section, we discussed how the parties were ready to fight and the conches were sounded. We saw the impact of the sound on both the parties. We also saw the different signs of success that were visible. And this is a great science that we can learn, is to have this finer vision so that we can detect whether we are going to be successful or not in our endeavors. And in Arjuna's case, we can see that he was going to be successful because he was properly aligned. And because of that, you could see the different signs of success. So success ultimately means being situated in our spiritual consciousness and progressing towards that, achieving self-realization. And that translates that into our day-to-day activities as that we are doing everything with that ultimate purpose, whatever we do in our life. And we surround ourselves, we align ourselves with persons, with place, with context, with things that are favorable for that ultimate purpose. And that is the meaning of ultimate success. So anyways, in this next section, we'll see sometimes when even though when we are aligned, we may go through stuff that is kind of buried in our consciousness, our attachments, our unwanted things in our heart. They're brought out in the front by Krishna himself. In this section, we'll see that. And how we react to that is important, because that's where we'll find out whether we are going in the right direction or not. So let's read the verses and then we'll do the PowerPoint. Arjuna Vacha Senayorubayor Madhye Ratham Stapayame Achyuta Yavateta Niriksheham Yodhu Kamanavastitan Kirmaya Saha Yodhavyam Asmin Rana Samudyame. Arjuna said, O infallible one, please draw my chariot between the two armies so that I may see those present here who desire to fight and with whom I must contend in this great trial of arms. So we already talked about this verse, how Krishna is taking orders from his devotee Arjuna. Nobody can order Krishna to do anything, especially driving one's car or chariot like a driver or a chauffeur. But Krishna takes that menial position just to please his devotees, just to serve his devotees. So we can see this great example of even God is so eager to serve, and that is our natural condition. Every soul, the dharma of the soul is to serve and love. And Krishna is showing by his own example how to love and serve. So these verses kind of set the tone for the Bhagavad Gita. Although Krishna is the Supreme Lord, he's the Supreme Guru, but he also takes great pleasure in serving his devotees. And that's why he's called Achyuta, which means he never fails to do that. He never fails to please his devotees. And that's a mantra for us, can be that we also use every situation in our life to please Krishna and please his devotees. If you are always in that mood of service and pleasing devotees, then we'll never go wrong. All the opulence and all the success will automatically follow if you are in that consciousness. Text 23. Yoshyamanana vaksheham yayeti yatra samagata dhatrastasya durbuddhe yuddhe priya chikirsavaha. Let me see those who have come here to fight, wishing to please the evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra. So it is very unusual that Arjuna had already sounded the conch shell. Then why is he now asking Krishna to go in the middle of the army and look at the warriors on the opposite side? And this is all happening by Krishna's will, because Arjuna is a surrendered devotee of Krishna. Krishna is bringing out this situation. So Arjuna comes face to face with his deepest attachments before he gets into this war. This war is actually a service for Arjuna. Engaging in this battle is a service for Arjuna to please Krishna, but he doesn't realize that yet. And because he's coming into the war with the wrong reason, Krishna has to uplift Arjuna's consciousness. So now, instead of fighting the war for himself, Arjuna will fight the war for Krishna's pleasure. And therefore, Krishna is creating this situation. So to bring out all these unwanted things, attachments and fears and misconceptions and doubts and pride, there's so many things we'll see in Arjuna's consciousness that are going to come up in the next few verses. And Arjuna's compassion. So his good qualities, his not so good parts of his consciousness, they will also be revealed. And Krishna will do that to us also when we are advancing in spiritual life. He'll bring out our deepest attachments, our weak spots, or our blind spots, so as to say. And sometimes we think, oh, I'm practicing spiritual life, but it feels like I'm going backwards. But that's like cleaning the room. When you start cleaning a room, sometimes the room becomes even more dirty. So not to get discouraged, but in those situations when we take the proper guidance from Krishna and his devotees, then and Krishna's words in the wisdom text, then we'll always come out stronger. And that's what will happen to Arjuna as well. So let's see what happens next. Sanjay Vacha Eva Mukto Rishikesho Gudakeshena Bharata Senayorubayor Madhe Stapayitva Rathottamam. Sanjaya said, O descendant of Bharata, having thus been addressed by Arjuna, Lord Krishna drew up the fine chariot in the midst of the armies of both parties. So, as soon as Arjuna requests this from Krishna, Krishna doesn't ask him any questions that, oh, why do you want to do that? I mean, it's time to fight. Let's just go and fight. But Krishna takes this opportunity and immediately he follows Arjuna's order and takes him to the middle of the parties. So now Arjuna will be faced with a big dilemma in his life. The biggest crisis of his life is about to unfold. Bhishma Drona Pramukatha Sarvesham Cha Mahikshitam Uvacha Partha Pashetan Samvetana Kurun Iti. In the presence of Bhishma, Drona, and all other chieftains of the world, the Lord said, just behold Partha, all the Kurus assembled here. So one thing that we can appreciate about Arjuna here is that before taking this big step, he's retreating into a mood of reflecting, introspecting that why am I fighting and why should I fight? That's a very good thing to think about before taking any step, a big step in our life or even small step, always knowing the why. Who am I doing it for? And Arjuna is asking these questions is a great example because it allows us to take a step back and not rush into a situation without the proper consciousness. Never engage in any activity without being in the proper consciousness. I guess that's what we can learn from Arjuna here. Tatra pashyasitam partha pitrinatha pitamahan acharyan matulan bhratrin putran potran sakims tatha swasuran sohridashaiva senayor vayorapi. There Arjuna could see within the midst of the armies of both parties his fathers, grandfathers, teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons, friends, and also his fathers-in-law and well-wishers. So all these different relatives are described because these are the people we are attached to. So many people we are attached to in this world in different degrees. And either we take shelter of them or we contend with them or compete with them. So Arjuna, he has all these relatives on both the sides, on the Kaurava side as well as on his own side. And um, he's just by seeing them, he's kind of like torn now. He doesn't know what to do. Should he fight with them? Should he um, make friendship with them? What should he do? He's attached to them. And we talked about how this concept of fallible soldiers, that whoever we are attached to this in this material world, if our attachment is material, then that relationship always gives pain, always causes more bondage and suffering. And this is what is happening to Arjuna. His material attachments to all these people is causing a great turmoil and depression in his heart. तान् समीक्ष्य स कौन्तेय सर्वान् बन्धूनवस्थितान् कृपया परया विष्टो विषिद्धन्निदमब्रवीत्. When the son of Kunti, Arjuna, saw all these different grades of friends and relatives, he became overwhelmed with compassion and spoke thus. So this is the impact of seeing everybody on Arjuna, and we'll see how he kind of um, becomes overcome with this grief and lamentation in the next section. But today, let's examine these verses from the point of view of Arjuna's introspection. He is going to go into great introspective mood and ask all these important questions. Although some of them are misplaced, but nevertheless, they are good questions from Arjuna's point of view. And it will bring out the whole Bhagavad Gita actually, because based on these questions from Arjuna, Krishna is next going to speak the message of the Bhagavad Gita, addressing these questions of Arjuna and the different reasons he will give for not fighting. So let me share the screen. I'll take a moment if anybody has any quick comment or reflection so far.
Can we ask question now or later?
Who's that, Radhika?
Yes, Bhaiya, I'm Radhika here.
Okay. Yeah, ask your question and then I'll see if it is a long answer, then I'll respond it.
So you were talking about relationships, and in relationship, if the quality of the relationship is material, then how difficult it is. And we also know that we can't live without relationships, right? So as sentient beings, we are attached to our family and to different people. But so my question is that what are the ingredients so that those relationships can become spiritual? Right? We bring out the fact that adding Krishna, but there are deeper nuances to that. So I just wanted to know so that how do we make material relationships into spiritual?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it's a deep question. But I guess the first step is to kind of see everybody in our life in different family and relatives or whoever they are as an arrangement of Krishna that these people have been put into my life. Um, there are many ways we can look at it. I mean, first is that sense of gratitude from Krishna that you put all these people in my life so that I've received so much love and affection or whatever situation. If it is not love and affection, then maybe it's some grief or suffering we have received because of family or whatever. Different people go through different situations in life. Regardless, in both situations, we can be grateful to Krishna for putting these people. There's a reason why Krishna has put these people in our life. And when we see Krishna's hand, then our relationship with these people changes. It changes at a fundamental level. We don't see them as like me and mine, but we see them as being placed by Krishna. So we also start seeing the temporary nature of these relationships. When there is love or affection, then it's hard to see the temporary nature of these relationships because we take shelter of these relationships a lot. And if there is the opposite, then that attachment can quickly turn into hatred, and people do crazy things with family members, revenge or whatever. Like we can see here in in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, they're all family members, but they are fighting against each other. So regardless, attachment either turns into greater bondage or it turns into a lot of heartburn and suffering. But I guess as practicing spiritualists, we can see that um, these relationships are all temporary, and therefore I don't have to be pulled down or being attached, pulled into by these relationships. So when we start developing a sense of inner detachment to these relationships, it doesn't have to come out externally as indifference or neglect, but we can maintain the same external mood of love and service, but now that mood is dominated by realizing that I am not permanently related to any of them. And this is just a temporary situation Krishna has created where we are coming together, and very quickly we'll all separate, again, go back on our own journeys in different lives. So this sense of detachment when we interact with family, either in a good situation or in a bad situation, with that sense of detachment. And considering that my primary relationship is Krishna, and so then our perspective on these relationships will change, and then they will not affect us in the same way. And we won't take shelter of them. I guess the danger happens when we start taking shelter of them and kind of not taking that shelter of Krishna in any situation of life. So that's kind of a short answer, but there are so many other facets to this we can discuss further.
It's a very nice answer. It's very beautiful, actually, because yeah, I think I really liked it, and I needed it at this point also. So thank you.
Thank you. So in introspection and compassion, these are the two, we talked about 6 signs of success. So introspection and compassion, they are two critical component of success in anything that we do in our life, either material or spiritual. So we'll see how Arjuna, we talked about this. Introspection is a very important aspect, which basically means that we think before we act. And this is what Arjuna is doing. And this is a famous quote by Rollo May. He says, human freedom involves our capacity to pause between stimulus and response. And in that pause, to choose the one response toward which we wish to throw our weight. The capacity to create ourselves based upon this freedom is inseparable from consciousness or self-awareness. So basically what he's saying is he's acting in this position of self-awareness, awareness of ourself as a soul. And when we take that pause, then we are not just pausing to reflect, but we are also pausing to connect with our real self, who is Krishna, who is sitting within our heart. We are seeking guidance from him in that situation. And Arjuna is going to do exactly that. He goes through his turmoil, but eventually he comes to the point where he seeks that guidance from Krishna, especially in bigger decisions of our life, even small ones. If we can develop this habit of connecting with Krishna in our day-to-day activity, and that's why this chanting is a very important thing to have in our life on a daily basis. When we are doing that, we are going into the self-awareness and connecting with Krishna, that I'm always dependent on you in whatever I do in my daily activities. And then Krishna says, I give you the intelligence by which you can come to me. So treating every activity in our day-to-day life as an activity through which I can come closer to Krishna, come closer to my real self, then our actually whole day becomes spiritual. It's not that only when we are chanting that is a spiritual activity and the rest of the day I can do whatever I want. But real spirituality comes from this finer consciousness, fine-tuning our consciousness before we do anything. This is a great example of a Zansin archer. And there was this teacher, there was this German professor who went to Japan to teach philosophy or something. And he came across the school in Japan. This is a real story, by the way, where it was very famous archery school. So he enrolled himself in his free time to go and take lessons from this famous teacher. And this teacher was very kind of notorious in a good way to, he would not teach his teachers, he would teach his students very basic things for years and years before he would allow them to shoot at a target. So like 4 or 5 years. So this general professor, he spent almost 4 years just like doing simple things. And he was getting very restless that, oh, when will I get the chance to shoot my arrows at a target? And then one day he impetuously asked his teacher, and teacher said, okay, go shoot. He gave him some target. And this professor felt miserably. He could not even shoot at the target. It was just going way off. So then he asked his teacher that, um, um, why did this happen? He said, because you're too caught up with things without having that proper consciousness, and you're not perfecting your foundation. You're not getting it. You're not getting the foundation right. Your consciousness is not in the right place. You're too much focused on the goal. And then he challenges his teacher that maybe let me see how you do, like whether you can shoot at a target. And if you're so focused, let me see if you can shoot at a target in the darkness of night. So the teacher accepts the challenge, and there they go. They go in the middle of the night, pitch black night, and the student puts the target somewhere where nobody could see it. And the teacher, he smack bangs the target in the first shot. And after that, he shoots another arrow, which basically goes through the back of the first arrow and splits that first arrow in half. So I guess the point there is that being mindful and being introspective in our activities can help us to achieve that sharp focus in whatever we do, this intentionality and the purpose, and doing every small thing with that intention and purpose can help us. So Arjuna right now is very distracted by the goal. He doesn't have a clear purpose in mind, and therefore you'll see that he's very kind of distracted. So this is the kind of a chart. Sorry, I stopped the sharing. This is the chart to kind of help us get a clear focus in our life. We spend our life in these 4 quadrants, and these 4 quadrants are like urgent, not urgent, important, and not important. And most of the time, our life is spent in taking care of the first quadrant, which is the urgent and important. And then the next one is not important and urgent. So that takes up a lot of our time. And the last chunk of our time goes into quadrant 4, which is not important and not urgent. So you can read through the chart, but we hardly spend any time in the second quadrant, which is important but not urgent. And this is where the creativity and the vision and the real introspection happens. And finding that balance, finding the time to connect with our real self, that's where it happens. We kind of keep on postponing it. Oh, I'll do it when I'm a little bit older. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it a month after. And then the other 3 quadrants, they're always competing with this quadrant 2. So we give in, like we start chanting. While we're chanting, our mind is distracted by, oh, I have to pay this bill. I have to attend this meeting today. I have to take my child for this or that. I have to go to the doctor. So a lot of our life is just spent in crisis management, interruptions. We get a phone call or unnecessary emails, or we're just constantly checking our Facebook or Instagram account, how many followers I got. So that's like quadrant 4. And not really focusing on what is important. So Arjuna, he's also kind of sucked into quadrant 1 and or quadrant. He's sucked into quadrant 1 right now, and he's not able to see the long-term purpose why he's fighting. And when we don't have that purpose or focus, then we don't have a clear impetus to do anything, and we get conflicting messages from our own consciousness. Should I do it? Should I not do it? Because there's no. So the bottom line is that taking out time from our life to plan out properly the things in quadrant two, which are important, but they're not urgent. But in a sense, they are urgent, but we kind of, they are long-term things. So we have to plan for them. And spiritual journey is that the most important thing, that it doesn't seem urgent. It seems like, okay, I have plenty of time. I can do it later on in my life. But we keep postponing it and not bringing it in our moment-to-moment life. So we want to bring that into a moment to moment, have a clear plan, purpose in our life, and then these other three quadrants, they will automatically fall into place, and then they won't consume us, they won't divert us from our real purpose. So this is again about purpose, how purpose is so important in our life. Viktor Frankl, he was a captive in one of the Nazi prisons. And he saw that while he was in the prison, he saw two categories of prisoners. And some of them, they would uh, they would just die after a few days. They would just give up and they would just die. And then he saw prisoners who would uh, they would share their bread. Many times they would go hungry themselves, but they would share their food with others and they would take care of others. And these people, he saw that they thrived, or whoever they had, he saw that whoever they found that purpose, they were able to come out alive from that Nazi prison. So he came out, and he also he developed this purpose of helping people. He envisioned that one day when he comes out, he's going to help people in so many different ways, describe his life, and help people find purpose. And he described that as a logotherapy, which means um, using purpose as a therapy in our life. And we can all say that because whenever we are lacking purpose, we kind of start feeling lifeless. So this is what is happening to Arjuna. Like in his, he says, there is nothing in this world, I venture to say, that would so effectively help one to survive even the worst conditions as the knowledge that there is meaning in one's life. There is much wisdom in the words of Nietzsche, who says, quote, he who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow. So Arjuna is going through this purpose crisis. He doesn't know what the purpose of his life is. And therefore, he's going to give these reasons which are basically indicating that doesn't have any purpose. So Socrates said, an examined life, the unexamined life is not worth living. So that's the whole point of introspection, examining where we are going. We have so many responsibilities in our life, our job, our family, our kids, our retirement. So many things are like constantly bombarding us. But taking a step back and say, hey, what is my purpose? Why am I doing whatever am I doing? And when we discover that purpose, then all those things actually they fall in place. It's kind of finding that connection, and things don't get they don't appear disconnected. Like, oh, my family life is one chunk of my life. My work life is my one chunk of life. My social obligations is another. So they all become connected together when we have that purpose, overall purpose in our life. That's what we learn from Arjuna, that from being purposeless and distracted, uh, will walk with Arjuna. The next few verses we'll see his crisis, which is a crisis of purpose and meaning. And from that, we'll see an Arjuna who goes through a whole uh, uh, passage of introspection, asking questions, engaging with Krishna. So that will happen through like the next almost 17, 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita. And in the end, we'll see Arjuna finding that purpose and meaning. And then he kind of very enthusiastically, he agrees upon continuing with his dharma, which was at that moment to fight. And so this is a journey of Arjuna, but this is a journey for all of us. So I'll stop here and take comments, questions, reflections, anything you liked, anything you disagree with. It's an open forum, so feel free to speak out your mind. So if you have some experience that kind of matches what Arjuna is going through, or some moment of crisis in your life and how it impacted you, feel free to share that as well.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Anchita.
So I was thinking about that quadrant that you showed about the important and urgent things. I mean, whenever I see it, it's like our most of the time is spent in not urgent and not important things, right? And growing, I mean, so growing in India, it was like when you grow up and you see people around you, it's like always a discussion that people should go and do the religious and spirituality thing once they are done with all the responsibilities of life, right? Your job is done, you retire, your kids are married, and your family is well taken care of. So I mean, so that's what I was thinking. But when I started the spiritual journey, I was back in 2019. I was always I always used to feel that, oh my God, I'm already late in this journey. So I mean, it was a conflict, right? Growing and it was an idea. It was built up in the mind that religious and spiritual thing is to be done once you're done with all the responsibilities. But when you start reading Bhagavad Gita and you meet devotees and you are in the association, you feel that you should start it pretty early in your stages of life, right? In the early stage of life. That was something that I was thinking about.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And why did you think like that? Why did you come to that conclusion?
So I mean, if you read through the scriptures, you talk to devotees, you listen to kirtan, you feel that you. I mean, I was feeling that I really don't know about the things in my life. I'm really not sure about the purpose of my life. That's something that Arjuna was thinking, right? And even after 2 years, I'm not clear about the purpose of the life. I'm still discovering. So that is something that made me feel that yeah, I am really late. But again, with the association, with your guidance and everybody's support, I feel confident that yes, even though I am late, but I will really really have a smooth journey in my spiritual life.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and I agree with you that it's kind of backwards that people have a misconception that spirituality is something that has nothing to do with my material life, and it's quite the opposite actually. When we have that purpose and meaning, then everything else that we do in our life, our job, our family dealings, and our social obligations, or whatever our crises and things like that we go through in our examinations, our tests in life, they all actually um, become quite different, and our dealings with them becomes very different. And it's like when we have that proper purpose and meaning, it's like um, rowing your boat in a river which has plenty of water, and it's a smooth rowing. Where versus if there is no water in the river and if you're trying to row a boat, you're constantly going to get stuck in the mud, and it's going to be very difficult. You're trying to just on your own strength, you're trying to row the boat. But when you have that purpose, and the high water in the river basically carries you, and your effort actually becomes very little because it's like already a smooth flowing situation for you. So this purpose and meaning and the spiritual intention actually helps in all different aspects of our life. It's like the fertile ground on which everything is well connected. Like in a garden, you have different trees, and people don't realize that they're all talking to each other, and if they are impacting each other, right? They are connected, but they seem disconnected to a person who's not aware. So with that awareness, we can connect all different aspects of our life into a beautiful garden, and then everybody can enjoy. Whoever is part of that your life, they will also feel the benefit of that consciousness that you are bringing to the table. Thank you. Anybody else? this concept of crisis with introspection, how does that appeal to you? Dealing with the crisis through introspection.
I was connecting it to the same point, that the answer which you gave, that whether it's family crisis, material relationship crisis, or any crisis that we go through, and when we examine, so the one outcome that when you take to the spiritual life, the one outcome which is the basis, which says that this is not without reason. This whole crisis, the reason behind it, and it's the true purpose of the crisis is not just to go through the crisis and go back to my normal state of affairs, but rather the crisis has been given to me so that I have some lessons to be, some lessons have to be taken from here, and I grow as a person. And so I think that introspection, that gap which you mentioned is so necessary, because first we'll have to see that what is there in it for me to learn, and then try to find a solution from that place, because otherwise you'll just try to quick fix it, and then quick fix it also, and also something which just appeals to your senses and mind, you'll take that kind of solution. So, and you'll not, and after that introspection, you'll not even seek mentors and guidance from anyone else, because you're just thinking about yourself all of the time. So.
Yes, that's a very good point. We constantly doing this knee-jerk reaction, responding to in a short-sighted manner, and this introspection can be done, or should be done actually, both before the crisis and after the crisis. Before the crisis, we can do it preemptively, even before any crisis is there. Like, it's a nice day, beautiful day, why do I need to introspect? But that introspection actually builds that muscle into us. And that's where, like, we recommend this chanting on a daily basis. That kind of brings us into that frame of mind that my life has a deeper purpose than just going about the day. And especially when a crisis strikes, then it comes in really handy to introspect before and after, or every step of the crisis. Aditi, any thoughts from you? Or Christine?
I find the crisis of introspection very helpful, and I find the way that it's presented in the Gita and the way you represent it, I find it so interesting, because at once, like, Arjuna is looking within, but he's also taking shelter in Krishna. There's this like balance between being in his own experience and sharing the experience with someone else. And just like how Radhika was talking about, you know, the relationships we take, how we kind of the quality of those relationships kind of impacts our quality of life too. I think it's so important to come together in this Sangha, because if we're having crisis of introspection, but we're doing it completely alone, it won't be as effective. So that was what I took away from what you shared.
Yeah, that's a good, very good point. Never go through a crisis alone. Reach out. Thank you, Aditi. Christine, go ahead.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, I guess I with that, you know, the chart of the crisis and everything, I was just thinking about how you know, just how stressful my life has been over the past couple of years, with like job worries and being a single mom and taking care of my parents, and, you know, all these stressors that feel and are, you know, very necessary. Like there's these things I have to do to take care of the people in my life and pay the rent and all of that. And I was just thinking that, you know, I'm just so grateful that, you know, I started studying with you a year ago, and I've been sort of in and out of the different groups and things, but that, you know, as much as like sometimes I just feel like even when I'm chanting, I'm thinking about all these things, or like it's not really making a difference, but I can just imagine where I would be if I wasn't, if I wasn't chanting or wasn't, in a study group or something where I have at least like that little bit of time in my day where I can, some part of my brain or my heart is connecting with Krishna or with, devotees or with the sound vibration. So that's what I was thinking.
Thank you, Christine, for sharing that. We are grateful that you have been part of the Sangha for almost 2 years now. And this is, every crisis can be dealt with proper sound vibration. I guess that's the mantra. We surround ourselves with the right vibration and mood of introspection and compassion, we can deal with any crisis. And we can actually come out stronger and more fulfilled through every crisis. We don't want to waste a crisis. Actually, that's another mantra. We don't want to waste a crisis. Crisis is something that is a great opportunity to grow and come closer to our real self, come closer to Krishna, establish deeper relationships with people through crisis. Thank you. So Kanya, do you have any thoughts, anything you'd like to share?
Hello, I'm sorry I entered a bit late. So it's interesting hearing your observation because this dilemma, this crisis, how we deal with crisis, I'm very interested in seeing how we can deal with a crisis, how to take positive meaning from a crisis in our lives. So yes, it'll be interesting to see how this progresses further. But as you said, a crisis is a great learning experience. And I think the crisis in my life has brought me here to Krishna. So right now I am feeling grateful to that crisis. It is any crisis, when you're in the middle of it, you think it's terrible, but it has a meaning. I think everyone should realize it, that a crisis has a meaning somehow.
That's very well said. Crisis is something that it's a pinprick that bursts our bubble in this material world and then brings us to our reality. So we're just talking about crisis and how to use a crisis for our benefit.
Definitely. I think we should never let a good crisis go to waste.
Yeah.
It's a very good opportunity to actually allow us to finally, because this existence here is actually innately filled with crisis. It's just that, when you require a coronavirus or something that happens in an acute situation to really, just like fever, right? Fever is a good thing because it shows that there is some virus inside, something is not right in the body, there's some imbalance. And if you didn't have fever, then we would never know. So crisis or suffering is kind of like that. It allows us to really hone in. Otherwise, we can just go through life and never really figure it out.
Yeah, actually, the whole life is actually, the material life is actually crisis. And then we forget that.
Yeah.
And we forget that there is no crisis, but actually it is a crisis. This body is actually a crisis.
It is a crisis. At any given point, this actually Prabhupada uses this very nice word. He says, our very existence is constantly threatened by non-existence. That is what is the Bhagavad Gita is really a preparation for that final moment. And throughout one's life, as one goes through different crises, how to respond to it in a way that is dignified and glorious. Right?
Hare Krishna Mataji and Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for being in the association of all the devotees, being in the spiritual journey. I feel like introspecting myself every day. I feel the knots are opening up, and being in the present moment and realizing the importance, it's helping the chanting mantra and being closer to the Krishna. It's helping the worth of the life, self-realizing and being in the moment, and continue being closer to the Krishna. Thank you for enlightening us every day. If I don't do one day, I will miss a lot. Maybe that is the association giving peacefulness and the happiness in the life. Thank you.
Thank you. That is actually this knowledge that we are receiving. Today is actually a very special day. It's actually the appearance day of a very powerful Acharya teacher, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And
bring those flowers like a home.
yeah, and we don't realize that this knowledge that we're receiving is not, it's back in the day, before they had postal service system, there were mail runners. And these mail runners would, there would be a mail and it would be taken to these far-flung places. Actually, even during the British era, there were mail runners. And sometimes along the way, they would have to encounter a tiger or a lion. And there's actually a wonderful story of one particular mail runner who, when he was encountering the tiger and he knew that he was not going to live, not be able to, take that mail where it needed to go, he made sure that he found some young person, some young boy, and he told him, this is the address, now you run and you take this. So this knowledge that we are getting today is actually because of the toil and the sweat and the hard work of all these previous teachers who have really painstakingly, first of all, put down all of this knowledge into writing. They've shared their own realizations, their own journey, and they're giving us the strength actually to be able to carry on and hold on to this knowledge. And then finally pass it on to the next person who's also struggling just like us. So this is actually...
Just wanted to show you who this is. Prabhupada's spiritual teacher, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. That's his appearance day today. And it is said that you get great spiritual blessings by praying to these great souls every day, especially on their appearance days or disappearance days. So we went there today to the Samadhi, and we got some special flowers for all of you. So I'd like to show them to you so you can get the blessings from him and progress in your spiritual journey.
That's amazing. Before he actually started, before he actually received this knowledge, he spent 10 years of his life. So this is the austerity and the amount of compassion and care that they have. He actually spent 10 years of his life sitting under the sky, basically, with when it would rain, then he would just hold an umbrella and he chanted 1 billion names of Krishna. So this Mahamantra, this chanting that we do, 1 billion names would be like how many rounds a day?
He chanted 192 rounds every day.
192 rounds every day. And he would
for 10 years.
For 10 years, not one day or 2
Non-stop.
days. And that place is right here. And only after that, he felt that now he was empowered and he had received the spiritual strength to actually be able to teach the process of bhakti. So this is the kind of, there is so much that, so many people have thought about us that one day, here is a person who's going to go through this struggle. And at that point, this is what will help them. So anyways, just wanted to share that since it's such a special day.
So I think we are beyond time. Anchita, you can lead us into that meditation and chanting. So thank
Yes,
you.
Radhika, go ahead.
I know this question because we are having this session on Bhagavad Gita, and we've been talking about introspection. We have been talking about dealing with crisis and all these different aspects which can help us become a better person and resolve many things in our life. But then what is the role of Krishna here, right? There's so many people out there talking about, you hear lectures or you hear podcasts and all different places, especially the corporate world at this point. I see that they have figured out all the solutions, right? Like Loka Prabhu was last week mentioning that even talking about sustainable living, and they're talking about not wasting resources and so many different things. And you can hear all of that outside also, that don't let go of a good crisis. Introspection is important. Mentors are important. Talking of the spiritual corporate culture, they're talking a lot about having mentors at this point. So then this question might come to somebody, then how is Krishna different from all of this, right? Like this message, because at the end we'll take the takeaway would be that Krishna, surrendering to Krishna, right? We've been talking about it. So just wanted to bring that, ask that question.
Such a good question. Prabhupada actually, said something that really caught my attention. He says, talking about all of these things without a reference point is like reading Hamlet without Hamlet, and so that struck me because, and this is something that, we've encountered this so many times, that if we don't, yes, I mean, there are so many self-help books and so many things out there that talk about similar principles because these are universal principles. But unless and until they find their reference point to the absolute source from which everything is coming, then what happens is that again it becomes self-serving, or it becomes like, for example, like there are books about how to make friends and influence other people. Now, in itself, if that is just seen in itself, then it can become a kind of manipulation, something that we may use to control people, manipulate people. It's about my own success or my own. So again, one thing that when we understand, and I think we're going to talk about this in the subsequent classes, that how the self is essentially meant to serve. And as long as there is any little tinge of selfish interest, separatist interest, then that service is ultimately not going to satisfy the heart. This is something that is spoken in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that only uninterrupted, unmotivated service can actually satisfy the heart. So all of these things that are being talked about is all great. But what is the underlying motivation? The underlying motivation is again profit.
Thank you, Sukanya. Thank you for joining.
Hey, Sukanya, thank you so much. Yeah, have a wonderful trip. So yeah, it's again, self-serving. And so to that extent, it does not, it doesn't really go anywhere.
And also it doesn't harmonize different aspects of our life into a thread. Like Krishna says, Mata parataram nanya kinchidasti dhananjaya, mai sarvam idam protam sutre mani ganaiva. That I am the thread that is basically holding this whole universe. So he's the thread which is holding all different aspects of our life. When we don't regard that thread, or we cut that thread out, then all the pearls actually scattered. And no matter how hard you try to bring them together, they never come together.
Yeah. And ultimately, what does it mean to be humble?
Yeah.
What does it mean to serve? Right? Is it really service? So, but the good thing is the fact that everyone's talking about it means or shows of how bhakti is intrinsically universal. That, we understand the value of service, we understand the value of humility and the value of mentors. But again, what does gratitude mean? Yes, we can talk in corporate circle about gratitude, but in the bhakti circle, gratitude is of a completely, we don't even know what gratitude means unless we see it in the bhakti culture. We don't know what service means unless we see it, how these devotees are, how these great acharyas are serving. What does selflessness means? We have no idea. I don't know if that kind of addresses your question, Radhika.
No, I was wanting to hear this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so Anchita, sorry, I really apologize to all of you for going overboard the time. I think the discussion just flowed. So now we'll jump into chanting and Anchita will lead us. Thank you so much.
Can you hear the music?
Too loud, Antisha.
Okay. Is it better?
Now fine. Thank you.
And can you see the screen also?
Yes. Can you little bit low volumes? Little higher.
Better?
Now fine.
Oh. Hare Krishna, everyone. So we'll start